What's up, YouTube fans? Today we're going to do a comparison of the Fans Toys Warthog with the DX9 Richtofen, both versions of Masterpiece Power Glides. So this DX9 came out quite a while ago. Believe it or not, this is from 2017. This one just came out in 2023, so over 6 years apart. And, I was expecting a lot from this Fans Toys. And if you have watched my review already, you'll know there's some disappointment here I have with the Fans Toys. So this will be an interesting versus, but as I always mention with the comparisons, I try to be as objective as possible, but of course there's subjectivity involved when you're doing comparisons like this. So if I pick one and you prefer the other, then you win. I really try to do these comparisons to help people decide what direction they want to go with their collection. With that being said, let's get started, and we'll start with the accessories. All right, and here are the accessories they both come with, and they both come with a blaster. Both of them are painted. Silver for the DX9 and then this pearlescent white for Fans Toys. They both come with the mask for Hoist Goes to Hollywood, that one scene from the one episode. And then Fans Toys comes with two adapters for the flight stand, but it doesn't come with the actual stand. Also, the stand is blue, whereas these adapter pieces are clear. I think that was kind of a big mistake, but since you don't get the stand, I'm going to give this stand over these two pieces, but I'll count these out. And then you're left with the addition of this Astoria minifigure. So either way, I'm going to give it over to DX9. All right, next let's talk about the gimmicks on these two. And they're both very similar in terms of gimmicks. They have the opening chest with the heart inside there. They both have the ability to mount to a flight stand in robot mode and vehicle mode. And they both have the ability to store the weapon in alt mode. So we're going to give them a tie on gimmicks. All right, now let's take a look at the cartoon accuracy and sculpt. In order to do that, we'll put the G1 image there so you can take a look for yourself. And when it comes to cartoon accuracy, they're both pretty darn good. Neither of them are like really too far off. But there's a couple of cues on the Fans Toys that I think nail it a little bit closer. Specifically the shape of the chest, the shape of the crotch area, the shape of the feet and the thighs. The DX9, it does have the chest that kind of flips over from jet mode to robot mode. But I think the shape overall of the Fans Toys is a little bit closer. And even from this angle, you can see the DX9 chest sticks forward from the wings, whereas Fans Toys is kind of flush, which looks more accurate. Feet are similar. I do think this shape, the triangular shape of the Fans Toys, does look closer, but both are kind of, I don't know. From the side and the front, they're both pretty clean. From the back, they're both pretty messy. They both have a backpack back here. They both have kind of kibble hanging off the legs. So as far as sculpt, I think they're both kind of similar in terms of the cleanliness of the sculpt. So I'm going to give them a tie. Usually Fans Toys wins that outright, but this time I'm not going to give them that. I think Fans Toys is going to take the cartoon accuracy here, and then they're going to tie on sculpt. All right, next we'll talk about the paint on these two. And when we talk about paint, we're looking at two things: amount of paint and quality of paint. And both these figures are pretty much fully painted. Fans Toys 100% painted with this glossy red, this pearlescent for the arms and thighs, and then the metallic blue and yellow there. And then the same pearlescent and metallic blue for the eyes there. The DX9 is also pretty much fully painted. You got the silver blue for the eyes, the pearlescent and silver paint for the arms and the thighs. You have red paint here, which becomes part of the fuselage in jet mode. Silver here on the engines, just on the edge. And I believe these are also painted in that maroon paint, silver paint here. I think the only thing that's not painted are these flaps, although there's a little bit of gray paint here. So very close to being fully painted on the DX9. I'm just going to call it a tie on the amount of paint. They're both pretty much fully painted. When it comes to quality of paint, they're both pretty good quality as well. But I think where DX9 is the edge here is the color matching. On Fans Toys, there is definitely two tones of color. You can actually see it right here. It's harder to see in the robot mode because a lot of the two-tone pieces are hidden away. You can see right here on the feet, this outer piece is a lighter red. This is a darker red. So there's a little bit of that in robot mode, but in vehicle mode, it stands out very prominently, and it's definitely distracting. So I'm going to give DX9 the paint just by an edge, which is a bizarre twist because typically Fans Toys never loses paint. But here, I think they're going to lose it just because of the consistency of the paint. All right, next we'll talk about the build quality on these two. And for me personally, the DX9 has always been a solid figure. Nothing really moves or shakes on it when you pick it up, both in robot mode and in jet mode. The Fans Toys, the knees are definitely an issue, especially these joints down here. Now, I can shake it. It's not too bad, but you can see the knee likes to fail. The other one that likes to fail occasionally is this joint here. This really needed a ratchet. I don't know why they chose to do it this way. But those pins are going to get loose over time, so those are things to watch out for. The tolerances, this is a very old figure. The tolerances are still good after all these years. In jet mode, it's definitely an issue on the Fans Toys. The wings and the rear tail fin and the nose cone all tend to kind of come apart on you, whereas the DX9 is a solid piece in jet mode. We're going to give build quality over to DX9. Next, we'll talk about the articulation on these two. In order to do that, we'll articulate each one individually so you can see how they perform. For the Fans Toys, the head is on a rotating swivel, goes up to there, down to there, rotates all the way around. Not much up and down, but it does have it. And this is another issue with the build quality. These things like to come apart. Shoulders rotate all the way around, up to there on a friction joint. Rotation at the bicep. Double jointed elbow gets a full bend. Rotation at the wrist. Single pin for the hands and the fingers move together. Rotation at the waist. Ab crunch here, it's a little bit of a strange ab crunch, but you can get it down. If you put too far, it starts to come apart, but you do get pretty good ab crunch on this guy. The hip skirts will move out of the way to allow your legs to go up to there, back to there, up to the side, all on friction, rotation at the thigh. You have a rotation at the knee, and there's two rotation joints. Actually, it's more of an irritation than a help. You have a double jointed knee, but really it's not worth doing the second joint. If you pull out on this, you can get that second joint, and you get just a hair, and this is part of the issue. It gets messed up, so you got to kind of fix it. But yeah, and this is one of the issues with articulating this figure. It likes to start coming apart. But you do get a double jointed knee here. If you use both, you can get it a little bit past 90, not much. So I don't know. I'm almost apt to not give them the double jointed knee, but it is there, so I'm going to count it. You have ankle tilt, both directions. You have up and down movement on this toe. It's kind of loose, but you do have it. Coming over to the DX9, the head is also on a rotating swivel. It goes up and there, down to there, rotates around. Shoulders rotate around on a friction joint out to there. You can lift up the shoulder joint. Sometimes these rear clips do come out, but you can lift the shoulder up to there, and the shoulder pad can go up as well. Rotation at the bicep, double jointed elbow, full bend. Rotation at the wrist. You have a single pin for the fingers, but the pointer finger is separate. But it doesn't really get you anything because it's curled, so it doesn't really add anything there. You have a rotation at the waist, no ab crunch on this one compared to the Fans Toys. If you lift the hip skirts out of the way, we can get the leg up to there. If we get this hip skirt out of the way, back to there, out to the side, all on friction, rotation at the thigh. Single jointed knee gets you exactly 90 degrees. You have ankle tilt and ankle pivot. So this is a tough call because Fans Toys, even though it's got the double jointed knees, I feel like not counting that, but it doesn't matter because Fans Toys has the ab crunch there. So that ab crunch is just enough to get this 1 point over DX9. So Fans Toys is going to win articulation to my surprise. All right, now let's talk about the transformation and engineering on these two. And for me, it's kind of an obvious give to DX9 for transformation. The Fans Toys transformation is really kind of a nightmare. It's not very fun. It's not very intuitive. The tail section especially doesn't want to go together, and there's really not a good place to hold on to it as you're doing it. So that makes for a frustrating experience. And in robot mode as well, there's some pieces and panels that like to pop apart. So we'll give transformation over DX9. When it comes to engineering, I'm kind of split on this because I really like what Fans Toys did, the mass shifting to get it from a mini bot over to a pretty large jet that's almost seeker sized. That's pretty cool to me. But some of the engineering choices they made are just not very good. These feet using, friction pins to do that. The knees, especially this, sliding joint. I think that was a mistake to do that. Not having ratchets in the knees if you're going to do something like this. I think that was also an engineering mistake. So I'm going to give them a tie in engineering. I think the DX9 one, even though the engineering's simple, it's effective. So since it can't do the magic of Fans Toys, I'm going to give them a tie on engineering. All right, now let's take a look at their alt modes. And before we get started here, I did have a small transformation error for the review on this guy. That little bump on the nose is actually meant for the back of Warthog's head, not for alt mode. So here I have it transformed inside. But taking a look at this, they have really different approaches here for the alt mode. Fans Toys went for that really realistic A10 Warthog vehicle, whereas DX9 went for that cartoon accurate chibi jet style. I'll put the image there so you can take a look. They really nailed that look of the cartoon. When it comes to the actual jets, though, I do actually kind of like the look of this. But what takes away from it is the varying paint colors. You can actually see it right here along the wings, along the fuselage, along this tail fin. And the other thing that bothers me about this is things like to move on you. This nose cone is constantly coming out of place very easily too. It doesn't take much. It just comes out of place. It's supposed to kind of fit over the other little gun there, but it just doesn't want to stay. These rear wings also like to move on you. There's a couple ways they can move. These can go in and out, but also these can go up and down. So you just kind of have to get it in place. And same for these engines, you got to get them perfectly situated for this fuselage to come together. So while I love the look, the inconsistency in the paint and the fact that it's kind of fiddly really leaves you from being able to really enjoy it. Even though it's got the opening cockpit, that's kind of cool. All of that kind of extends away. This one is really solid. It just stays together. It works. It looks like the cartoon. I do wish it had this kind of color red, more brick red versus this maroonish red. But either way, I think this is the more solid, better feeling overall, and better performing jet mode. So we're going to give alt mode over to DX9. Next, let's take a look at the cost on these two figures. And as always, I use the US retail price for this comparison. Fans Toys Warthog comes in at $130 US retail. DX9 Richtofen comes at $80 US retail. So DX9 is going to win on the cost category. And last, we'll take a look at the Members' Choice category, where I ask my members to take a look and choose which one they prefer based on looks and no other factors. And you can see Fans Toys is going to win the Members' Choice category here. So final thoughts on the comparison. You can see the score there, and DX9 is going to take this one. And I am a bit surprised because typically when Fans Toys is the second to market, like they are in this case, especially 6 years second to market, they usually improve significantly, or at least enough to win versus like this. And in this case, I don't think they did. I think there's enough issues with this guy that they really couldn't beat this out. And this is a 6-year-old figure, so that's saying a lot that they have a design that stands up even today. Now, that doesn't mean that Fans Toys, it doesn't have a place here. So if you're the type of person that doesn't really transform your figures often, or you're not really a pick it up and pose and mess with it type of person, you're just putting it on the shelf and leaving it, I think that Fans Toys looks really good. I love the way it looks. I'm a big Fans Toys fan, and I do love the way their figures look. But the problem is it's not fun. If you do like to transform your figures and pose it and mess with it, the DX9 really is a fun figure, and it's very easy and simple and intuitive to transform. So that's kind of how I would look at this. Now, Astoria here has decided to stick with Richtofen as hers. Me personally, I haven't decided if I'm going to keep both of these or if I'm going to get rid of one. Right now, I'm sticking with both. But that's it for this comparison. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.